Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tyler here from Fathers Moving Forward. Shout out to all the Fathers Moving Forward participants out there and all you folks at LDC as well. So part 2, we're going to focus on anxiety and coping mechanisms. These coping mechanisms can be applied to stress and anxiety. Really, it's up to you. So last week we gave a pretty basic definition of anxiety, sort of why it happens. And I want to go back to that and just really quickly say it is a pretty basic definition. It's not the end-all be-all. I didn't encapsulate anxiety in its entirety. I really did not. I wanted to make it accessible. Again, I encourage you to go out there, look at different resources, explore YouTube, try and find really good and reputable resources, or even better yet, lean on your social worker or counselor or someone, a professional, to really get good information on anxiety. Leaning into that thought, I'm going to demonstrate 3 coping mechanisms or strategies. And again, these aren't the end-all be-all of the strategies. There's a lot of different strategies. And one thing that's very normal is that one strategy will work for one person and it might not work for another. And there are levels to that. So one of the things we're going to look at today is exercise, but really, some people don't have the ability to exercise, whether they have a physical disability, or an illness. They don't necessarily have that luxury of getting out and about and sweating it off or just doing some in-home exercises. So that might not work for them, but that doesn't mean they can't cope with it. Also, it might just not work for you at all, like whether you're not interested in this type of exercise, that's also okay. And I'll say this, it's okay to identify things that don't work. It's almost as important as identifying things that do work. But what's really critical about this is that and really it's critical about everything that we're trying in life. It's okay to move on from something and kind of forget it, as long as we're going to continue down that journey and explore other options. So if exercise, for example, doesn't work for you, that's okay. But try and continue down that journey of finding coping mechanisms and find something that works for you. So that's, I guess, the caveat to all of this. So I guess the best thing to do right now is to kind of get into the first coping mechanism. So the first coping mechanism we're going to look at is breathing. Now, I understand you hear breathing, it might sound basic. I've heard it before too. If I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, if I was a younger person and I heard someone just say breathing, I might be turned off by that. But it is very critical. And the skills and the strategies, the 3 I'm going to talk about today, I'm not going to overcomplicate these. They're really to build momentum and send you on your journey, or connect you to your counselor or your social worker and really get into a deeper level. Because the other thing too is sometimes we have a manageable amount of anxiety and sometimes it feels uncontrollable. And if for you it feels totally uncontrollable, then I highly encourage you to get connected with somebody. Whether that's somebody, really close to you that you can really pour your heart into and vent to, or better yet, a professional who has a really good understanding of anxiety and can walk you through that. Having said that, going back to my point, the 3 things that I'm going to talk about are fairly basic. They're easy to do. They might feel weird and silly, and I'm going to feel weird and silly showing them to you, but I guess I'll just do it anyway. So breathing. Why is breathing important? Breathing, again, it sounds basic, but it really, when we talked about those physical characteristics last time, about shaking, maybe sweating, increased heart rate, tension in your muscles, breathing can really help reduce the impacts and those feelings and kind of regulate you. And we take breathing for granted because We don't have to think to do it. It just happens. But if you think about, maybe you've ran or had some cardiovascular intense exercise, like to recover, you really have to concentrate on breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, and really just taking deep breaths. Or if you're hurt, a lot of people say, okay, just breathe, like regulate yourself. So it's cliche, but it's because it really, really works. And one strategy I can give you is a strategy called the 7-11 breathing technique. So it's called 7-11 because it's based on 7 seconds and 11 seconds. So the idea is you breathe in slowly 7 seconds, and then you exhale even slower than that for 11 seconds. So in 7 seconds, out 11 seconds, but don't get hung up on 7 and 11 if you don't want to. If you want to just breathe in slowly and controlled, and then try and make the exhale even slower, and then get into a groove, that works too. So that's the first one, easy peasy. So the next one we're going to talk about is exercise. Some of the benefits of exercise are related to hormones. So when we're feeling stressed or happy, hormones play a big role in that. When we're feeling stressed and anxious, cortisol is a hormone that really has a negative impact on our mood and our physical health as well. So to keep it simple, if you do 20 to 30 minutes of physical exercise a few times a week, that'll significantly impact cortisol. And what I mean by that is that it will reduce cortisol, and that'll have really long-lasting and positive impacts on your mental health. What it also does is increase some other hormones that uplift us and make us feel better, and one of those is serotonin. So we don't really need to get into depth. So again, this is just for you to access, and if you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to either connect with me individually or go out on your own and look some of these up, and take control over that. So exercise, just to review, will decrease cortisol and increase serotonin, and it'll make you feel better. There is a lot of evidence on this as well, which is, I'm happy to say, because I don't want to be sharing misinformation to you guys, especially at this time where there's a lot of information coming at you with regards to COVID. This is indisputable. There's nothing controversial about exercise and it having a positive impact on anxiety. And when I say positive impact, I mean reducing the effects of anxiety. So what I'll do is I'll show you some examples of how you could get some exercise. I am not qualified to give you, a rundown of what's considered good technique or good exercise. I encourage you to look that up on your own, but I'll just give you some ideas of what you can do in the house to get some exercise. So why don't you follow me? The last thing we're going to look at are strategies around parenting. So I've heard a lot of self-criticism recently around parenting. So either just not feeling like it's a good situation, or that the parenting environment has now changed because we're not out and about anymore. We're really confined to a home or a single space, and that's stressful. we have to really change and adapt, how we take care of our kids, and the amount of time we spend with our kids too has changed, and it can be stressful. So what I want to say about that first and foremost is, if you're feeling sometimes annoyed, or you're just not feeling like you're on your A game as a parent, that's absolutely normal right now. A lot of parents are feeling that way, and you're not a bad person for feeling that way. In fact, like I said, it's quite normal. But a couple of things to remind you of is, of course, there's a reasonable amount of time that you should be spending with your kids, and it really depends on what age they are. But sometimes spending every waking moment with a child isn't reasonable. It's unreasonable. And why that is because we need individual time to take care of ourselves. So really, this strategy is looking at the previous two and asking yourself how you can make time to practice breathing or practice exercise or whatever coping mechanisms you have in place. How do you create time to exercise those and practice those by yourself? Because it is important that you get some time alone and to kind of center yourself again. So don't beat yourself up if you're not feeling like you're on your A game. It's pretty normal right now, and you need to make time to practice those coping mechanisms. In terms of some stuff you can do with your children really need to know that they're in a safe environment. So there are different ways of accomplishing that. Just some simple ways is making sure their basic needs are being met. So food, again, spending some quality time with them, making sure that they have cuddles and they're just feeling loved. The other thing you can do is really use play. When a child uses play, they're really mastering some skills. And the cool thing about play too is they can do this alone, or they can do this with you. So there can be an opportunity to accomplish serve and return, so that interaction between you and the child, and allowing them to really guide the process and you just follow along. But there is an opportunity for them, depending on their age, to go and play by themselves. As long as they're safe, this might be a good opportunity for you to practice some of yourself, your coping mechanisms or your self-care practices. Again, making sure and ensuring safety is, the absolute priority, but it's absolutely okay if they're playing on their own. So take advantage of that time. So just to recap, really try not to beat yourself up about not being on your A game. A lot of us are in our B games and C games, and that's totally cool and normal. Make time for self-care to either practice some of the stuff that we outlined in this video, or whatever you have that's working right now in your own life. Make sure your child is feeling safe and nurtured, whether that's through cuddles or meeting their basic needs, and creating opportunities for your children to play either alone or with you, and really practice that serve and return, that interaction, that back and forth, and allow them to guide that. So guys, these are just a few coping mechanisms for self-care. They're applicable to anxiety, but they're also applicable to stress and feeling depressed and sad and sort of a range of emotions. So that's it. What I would really love is to get some feedback on this video. If you learned something, if you didn't learn something. Again, if you're feeling like anxiety is a little bit out of control for you, I think it's really important that you get connected with somebody, whether that's a professional in the community, your social worker from Louise Dean Center, myself, if you're a Fathers Moving Forward participant. If you want to connect with me and do some individual stuff, we are doing some really cool stuff using video counseling. So those are options for you. So I hope you liked part 2, Coping Mechanisms Anxiety. All right, guys.